Hello, everyone, and welcome to February's How Not to Burn Toast. I think we decided Decadent date night.
Yeah.
So, Valentine's Day.
Yep.
So, we're going to be showing you some recipes to make your indoor date night, stay-at-home date night, just as nice as going out.
Yep. And depending on, I think yours is a bit more of an advanced recipe from the ingredients that you told me you were going around to buy. But we have an advanced recipe and an easier recipe as well.
Yeah, I tend to like to, make things a lot more complicated than we need to be. But it doesn't just stop with our recipes. We're a library, if you didn't know. And we have a lot of cookbooks. In fact, I think that's the largest nonfiction section we have because I buy the books and I like cookbooks. So we grabbed a couple to show you. These are all cooking for two cookbooks, and I love them because it means leftovers for me or, another night of not cooking.
Yeah.
So we have a bunch. This is Slow Cooking for Two. And I actually own this one and another one, which is checked out right now, Cooking for Two by Christina Lane. She also has a dessert one, which is the one I originally bought, but really good recipes in this one. This is The Cozy Table. This one actually has like graduated recipes. So it says 1, 2, or a few, so it tells you how to cook for different sizes. Healthier Together. Oh, yay. Making tasty, healthy food. And then my favorite, and one of my recipes comes from this. This is the Complete Cooking for Two cookbook from the America's Test Kitchen. And like I said, I own some of these because, you just have to try them out at the library and then buy them. But my recipe from here, if I can find it in here, is the gooey fudge cake, which is yummy. I have also made the yellow cakes from in here. Here we go. There's a picture. Gooey fudge cakes. But this is a great book. I mainly use it for the desserts because it's harder, I think, to cook smaller portions for desserts, to be real honest. But these are all available at your library, and many of them are available online through either Libby or Hoopla, along with many others. So, well, the other thing we wanted to talk about before we introduce our recipes is some of the other videos we do. Actually, I should say Kayley does. So she did these.
I do a monthly crafting series, almost monthly. We missed January, but this month we're doing Valentine's crafts for the loved ones in your life, or if you like to make little crafts for your grandparents or your parents or anyone in your life. This month we featured paper flowers and different Valentines and some decorations and things. So that's really fun. It just uploaded on Monday, February 8th when we're filming this. And it's really fun if you want to pop on over and look at it. But yeah.
So this is a short video because there's not a lot of talk.
A short intro.
Yeah.
Other than chocolate and carbs.
Chocolate and carbs. So my recipes are, well, I did a salad because, when you're balancing the other end with molten lava cakes, salad with a carrot ginger dressing. And then I did something called Sukiyaki. And for those who don't know, obviously it sounds Japanese. It is Japanese. It's like Japanese fondue without the cheese. So it's a hot pot and you get to dip things in it. It's really fun to do. I do it a little bit differently than you'll find recipes because the first time I ate it was at a restaurant. And so you were dipping versus cooking it all in the pot at one time. So, and then molten lava cake. That's my favorite. So I hope you enjoy those. And
you did a whole 3-course meal.
I did a 3-course meal because I'm crazy. But I do love that kind of thing. And they're actually all really simple. They sound complicated, but they're all really simple to prepare. I mean, the gooey chocolate cake thingy, only takes 15 minutes to cook. Actually, 12 because I use bigger ramekins. The sukiyaki is more like cutting. And the salad dressing you do all in a blender. So it's really simple to do. So your date night doesn't have to be complicated.
And then for my recipe, I made a creamy margarita chicken. So if you're going Italian side, if you're missing going out to eat at Olive Garden, this can help quench those cravings for you.
Breadsticks.
I don't have a recipe for breadsticks, but you can get the fawn bake little rolls.
I really love those.
Store. But it's just a simple pasta dish, and it's easy to make. You can alter it, like remove like the cream and the dairy, and it can be just a regular, easy like weeknight meal as well. So, and then I also in our like PDF or our description down below, I left Austin's balsamic dressing recipe as well. If you want to go for a different kind of dressing recipe as well.
Yay! So these are some recipes you can try out for day night. If you do try, let us know. If you have any of your own you'd like to share, like chocolate recipes, please share them with us. We always like seeing food in general.
Or if you have any traditions, let us know what you're doing for Valentine's Day while we're all locked down and loving each other from home.
Yeah, fondue is also a good one.
Yeah.
I'm trying to stay away from cheese, so I didn't do that one this year. But I did use a fondue pot for my sukiyaki.
Cool.
So that's it, really.
Yeah.
If you want to learn about the history of Valentine's Day, you can look it up online. But yeah, so these could be done for any date night. It doesn't have to be, the designated one.
Yeah.
So we hope you enjoy, and we'll be back next month with green recipes in honor of St. Patrick's Day.
Okay.
They may or may not be Irish, but we want to make green things taste good because green things do taste good. So we'll see you next month. Bye. Hi everyone, and welcome to the cooking portion of the next episode of How Not to Burn Toast. Today we're doing a decadent date night, and I had a couple ideas for this. And my first idea was super fancy. I'm gonna make beef Wellington. Yeah, no, did not turn out. Pay Gordon Ramsay to do it. That's so much better than the mess I made. So I actually turned to my favorite cuisine, which is Japanese food. Surprise, surprise. Daisuki desu. So I love Japanese food. And probably about 8 years ago, I was in LA and I had something called Sukiyaki, which is meaty fondue. There's no cheese involved. Fondue is my other idea, but since I'm not doing dairy, here we go. So we're going to do a full course kind of meal, not a Japanese full course, but an Americanized full course. We're going to do a salad with a carrot ginger dressing, kind of like you'd get at those Japanese steakhouses. Then we're going to do sukiyaki, which is, you may have heard of shabu shabu. So this is kind of a more sweet version of that. And then, very non-Japanese but super tasty, is molten lava cakes for two. So let's get started. So we're going to start out with our carrot ginger dressing. And it's fairly simple. And it's one of my favorite dressings to have around. There's not a lot of sugar in it because carrot's already kind of sweet. There's no mayo or anything like that. So it's good and slightly good for you in comparison to a lot of other things. So we're going to start out, and this time I brought my food processor. This poor thing has been with me for 10 years, so it's kind of beat up. But we're going to start out with a carrot, just your standard carrot. The recipe says to peel it. I don't tend to peel my carrots. I wash them real good because the skin really doesn't taste like much. But I'm going to cut this up and stick it into my food processor. And yes, I know my knife cuts and my knife handling is probably not the best. So please don't copy me. Stick this over in my food and move this over a little. It also calls for a quarter of an onion. So we're gonna stick that in there. You notice I'm not cutting everything up super small because it's all gonna be blended. So then we come to the ginger. Now this is ginger. Most of us may have only seen it in the dried form. I grew up molasses cookies. The molasses cookies actually I showed in the Christmas episode are my favorite cookies, and they use dried ginger, but fresh ginger is very different. It's spicy in a different way, more floral, and depending on the age of your ginger, and I'm thinking this might be quite a young ginger, which is good, because ginger gets really fibrous the older it gets, which for this isn't a big problem, but it gets a little woody after a while. So the easiest way to peel ginger is not with a peeler. You will peel your fingers instead. It is with a spoon, and I'm using one of the useful tiny teaspoons that came with my dining set. And I'm just going to peel it. I like to have ginger in my house. I throw it into soups a lot, especially chicken noodle soup. If you're not feeling good, ginger is good for your stomach and super tasty. So we're just going to take this knob of ginger, toss it in here too, and peel it out. Then another ingredient you may be familiar with but not have actually used before. This is miso. It's also one of my favorite ingredients. This is a shiro style miso, so it's considered white miso. They call this one yellow, so it's a little more pungent than the straight up white. And there's tons of different kinds. This one's actually pretty good. I got it at Winco. So you don't have to look all over the place for it. They also have it at Whole Foods. And if you're lucky enough, which in Las Vegas, normally I would say we're super lucky, we have a couple of really nice Asian markets. But it's a pandemic, so it's harder to get to them. You can order a lot of this stuff online too. So we need about 1 tablespoon, which is, about that much. And I always end up putting a little bit more in there because I love miso. Miso soup is another very popular Japanese thing that you can make when you're making a Japanese meal. In fact, I'm hoping that in April we'll do a all Japanese food show. So I'll show you how to make miso soup then. And then we need just a little bit of sugar. Where did I put it? There we go. 1.5 teaspoons, or tablespoons. Woo! More sugar than I thought. I actually am only going to put in 1 tablespoon because I don't like my dressings super sweet. If you like them more on the sweet side, go ahead and add that right in. You need I forgot about this. This is sesame oil, made out of sesame seeds, and a teaspoon of this. This stuff is really powerful, so be careful with it. It can easily overpower a whole dish. Let's see. I'm just going down my list. 1/2 cup of rice vinegar. And please do use rice vinegar. It's really easy to get. Not to fear. I have more. Went to Trader Joe's. So you can get it anywhere pretty much. I normally pick it up at Winco when I'm there, but I was at Trader Joe's today, so I picked up some of theirs. You need about half a cup. This is a whole cup. I just don't like dirtying multiple things if I don't have to. And then what else? Some salt, and then 1/4 cup of a neutral flavored oil. Where's my salt? So I'm using just olive oil, nothing fancy olive oil, just regular old olive oil. That's about 1/4 cup. And this all just goes in your food processor or blender if you want to use a blender. And then you just mix it up. Oh, first you plug it in. Plugging things in is very important. You're going to be like, Sam, that's chunky. Yeah, it does have some chunks to it. But we're going to do the all-important taste test. Always taste your foods, folks. It helps you realize, does it need more sugar? Does it need more salt? There's a good ginger taste. It would be on the more acidic side for most people, but that's exactly where I love it. So, right there. That's our dressing, and I'm just going to put it off to the side while I get the sukiyaki stuff ready. All right, so we're moving on to the main event of our meal, which is the sukiyaki. And sukiyaki is really good. I think it's good for colder months because it is warm, and it's normally done, it's a hot pot, so it's normally done sharing. So make sure the people that you're eating with, or the special person you're eating with, is in your circle and is not sick. But there's a bunch of different ways to make it. I'm gonna make it in more of a shabu way, which means a lot more dipping than traditional sukiyaki may have, because that's the first way I had it. Now, it is a meat dish primarily. Meat. So if you have vegetarians, I'll talk about how you can make it vegetarian, but it is a meat dish. Now this right here, and because it's a special time of year, I upgraded it. This is thinly sliced beef. Now, if you have an Asian market nearby, you can probably get beef or pork for shabu shabu. Because it is a pain in the butt to slice it yourself. And I'll attach a video to show you how to slice meat thinly, and even mine isn't that thin. But this is a grass-fed chuck, and you're like, and that's my microwave, and you're like, why would you choose something like chuck? Well, we're looking for something that has a lot of marbling in it. So something like a filet mignon has no fat in it. Now, when you get roast, like your pot roast, you normally use something that has more connective tissue, more fat in it. But because these are thin slices, it's not going to get tough, and you're only cooking it for a couple of seconds. It's not going to get tough like, you know, if you tried to sear a steak of this. So you can also use ribeye. The reason I didn't use ribeye is, one, I couldn't find it in the store. Well, I could, but they're only in steaks, which are really hard to slice. So this was in a roast, and I use thinly sliced beef a lot in other dishes that I love. So I actually sliced it all up, but you want to layer it nicely over a plate, and then you can put it in your fridge and wait until sukiyaki's ready. So then we'll move on to the more vegetable portions, the more non-meaty portions of sukiyaki. So
Now I talked about tofu last time, but this is one of the few times I actually will eat tofu. That's not, you know, apparently I didn't do a good job opening this. That is not, you know, chocolate. So this is super firm tofu. You can use just regular firm. I just happen to have the super firm. And then I drained most of the liquid. It's hard to get all the liquid out. And I'm just going to cube it. So you can either slice it down the center. Ta-da! And then in little bite-sized cubes. And no, my cubes are not even. I don't have a ruler. And these are good if your partner is vegetarian. You know, lots of tofu. If they don't like tofu, you can use other stuff like, let's see, we're going to have some mushrooms in here. We're going to have some cabbage. So there's lots of stuff for vegetarians, and you just have to change up a little bit the way that you're making things. Just trying to get them off my board. My board's all wet. So next, cabbage. This is Napa cabbage. You'll probably see it in your everyday supermarket. And we just need some leaves off of it. And you can either cut it all, or you can just tear some leaves off of it so that it doesn't go bad where you cut it. And I like, you can use bok choy or anything like that. Any kind of cabbage, really. So a lot of these recipes will call for things that we really can't get in the United States, like chrysanthemum leaves, and long onions, and you're like, but Sam, I can get long onions. No, they're very different from what you're thinking of as long onions, which would be green onions, but we're going to use green onions. So I'm just going to cut these in half so that they're not huge when you're trying to stick them in your mouth, and put them on my handy dandy platter. And really this recipe makes enough for 4 people, so you can have leftovers. Now the aforementioned onions. So you can just use regular onions. I bought a bunch of green onions. Now Tokyo long onions, they're very different. They're thicker, they're kind of more along the lines of leeks. So you could use leeks in here. I don't really care for having to clean leeks because they're super sandy. So I just went with something I could easily find in my supermarket. So I'm just taking off the bottom, stem end, or root end I should say, and then cutting them about halfway up. And you can always keep these greens. They're really good for putting on top of things. Or if you make your own vegetable stock, you can chuck them in there. So there we go. Got those done. Get these off to the side. And then we're gonna move on to mushrooms. Mushrooms. There are so many different varieties. I have 2 today. These may not look familiar to you. They're like enoki mushrooms. They're probably not exactly enoki mushrooms, but they're as close as we can get. You can also use like beach mushrooms. You can just use regular mushrooms too, but I like being fancy apparently. So these will fall off together. You kind of want them to come off in bunches if you can manage that. That way, when you go to try to pick them up with your chopsticks, you're not fishing after this. So I'm just breaking them off after I took the root end off. They're really tasty. And I just happened to look out that they had them at Whole Foods because sometimes they don't have them. So, yay, we're lucky. Now, these are shiitake. So you're probably familiar with these. They're used in a lot of Asian cooking. I'm just going to take a little bit of the stem end off and then make a little pattern on top. It helps the broth get into them. So I'm just making, I'm not cutting all the way through, just partially. Now these are really meaty. Some people really don't like them. I'm hit or miss on them depending on how you're using them. But they're a great substitute for vegetarians, again. So if you have a vegetarian, just use more of these or more different types of mushrooms. Like oysters would be oyster mushrooms would be good in here. Like I said, cremini, which are really good to eat. Even old school, just the white button mushrooms would be really good in this too. I also like mushrooms. So I've got those over there. And then I'm gonna show you the other stuff. So, noodles. I love noodles. So these are udon noodles, so you might be familiar with them. These are for the end when you've eaten all the other things. Now these are probably not familiar to you. These are shirataki noodles. They're made out of a white yam, so they are gluten-free. There's no wheat in them at all. And these go into the broth with all the other fun stuff. So now we're going to make the broth. And I'm using my handy dandy, does not get used that much, underrated fondue pot. I have two actually. So I don't have the fancy pots to make sukiyaki. They normally use, I believe, a cast iron pot. But I do have this. So this makes it so you could serve it on the table or something like that, which is the way you kind of want to do it. So we're going to start making the sukiyaki sauce, which is 1 cup of sake. That's Japanese alcohol. And I happen to have fancy kind. Or I should say pretty bottle kind. Ooh, pretty bottle. You can just use cheaper. This is pretty fancy. Most people wouldn't use this, but it happens to be what I have at home. So you need a cup of sake. You need a cup of mirin, which is Japanese sweet rice wine for cooking. In the United States, we cannot get real mirin, or you can, but it's harder. Most of the time we use aji mirin, which has no or very low amounts of alcohol in it. And then we need sugar, about 1/4 of a cup. A little bit more since my thing was wet. And then soy sauce. A whole cup of this. So now we're going to bring this to a boil. Watch pots never boil. Okay, so now we're at a boil, and oh, can this be powerful? I ended up adding a little bit more sugar to mine because the sake is a little bit more alcoholic than most cooking sakes, and I'm actually kind of choking because there's enough alcohol in here. But taste it. If it tastes good to you, it should be salty sweet. Now, you're not going to use all of this. You're like, what? Why did I make all of this? Because you can use it later. It keeps good for a month. And I'm going to pour off some of it. Oops, and I made a mess. I'll wipe that up. Because that would be strong just dipping directly into that. You actually end up diluting the sauce with dashi, which is the ubiquitous broth for Japan. And dashi is made from two things. It's made from kombu and dried bonito flakes, which are fish flakes. And I make my own. Because, of course, I do. That's actually what was in my microwave thawing. So I made this. Still a little frozen. And I'm going to add about a cup of this in here. There's actually 2 cups in here. I'm gonna add about half. And I'm going to turn back on to warm. Ooh, now I can smell the dashi. That's good. So it has kind of a salty sweet flavor with a little smoky fish flavor from the dashi. And this is your dippin' broth. Yes, I said dippin'. So this will be used for cooking. And now we're gonna kind of, or at least I'm gonna try to show kind of what I would do if I was plating this up for a date night kind of thing. Okay, so I put my salad, look at me cheat. I put my salad in a bowl. Does not want to open. Just a bowl big enough for how many ever people that you have. Technically, there's only one of me, but. And then I have my dressing, and you could put this in a nice little carafe, or if you want to dress the salad ahead of time. And you can add whatever you want to your salad. This one had carrots and radish in it. But some cucumber and tomato would be nice. And then give your salad a little toss. And then you can wipe your bowl off when you're done. Make it look fancy. So then you have your salad ready. You notice I didn't put a ton of the dressing on there. I didn't totally drown it. And as you toss it, you know, it covers nicely. Now the really important thing to all Japanese meals, in fact, as I'm learning Japanese, it both means rice and meal, gohan. So you want rice with this. And if you can, get your hands on some Japanese sticky rice. Why? Because of these. So most rice, or at least the rice Americans like, cannot be picked up easily like this. It's not sticky. So this is Japanese short grain rice. I got it Amazon. You can get it through pretty much anywhere now. It's much more available, but like Whole Foods or something like that. Now for plate up, you could easily do something semi-fancy. Gotta go get some noodles. Some noodles, and I'm doing plate up for one person. So some shiitake, some enoki. If you have, some people do carrots and stuff like that. Some tofu. And here we go. You notice I didn't put any meats on there because I don't like mixing this stuff with raw meat because meat is raw. Cross-contamination is the fancy term for it, but that's just my 2 cents right there. But there's a bunch of other stuff you can add to it too. And when you're eating it, which once my pot comes up to boil, so I got my pot, okay? It doesn't have to be at a boil. I like to keep it warm though. And it's really easy to do. Get the meat out. So you use chopsticks. Ha ha ha. Chopsticks. I know not everyone's comfortable with them, so you could use a fork if you really wanted to. But we all know you want to use chopsticks, and I'm not that great at it. I practice a lot, but you dip your meat in. You put some mushrooms in to cook. Now, a lot of times with these things, people will cook the meat ahead of time. I like just cooking it in the pot. We'll throw some mushrooms in. Oh, I forgot to put green onions on the plate. A little bit of tofu. Tofu just really needs to warm in there. And a nice little giant thing of lettuce. Now, in Japan, when they do sukiyaki, what they do is dip it in raw egg, and you're like, ew, raw egg. It's really good. But it's hard to find pasteurized eggs in the United States, or when you do, they're very expensive. So you can pasteurize your own eggs, or you can just eat as is. And I like to eat over my rice bowl, so it drips down. It's yummy. It's tender. You wouldn't think it's tender because it's chuck. When you can buy a grass-fed piece of beef for less than you can buy a steak, you know it's a economy cut. But now we just kind of wait for these to cook, and depending on what it is, so tofu just really needs to be warmed through. And if you don't like tofu, you'll probably like it in this because it gives it a lot of flavor. So this is sukiyaki, homemade sukiyaki. I hope you give it a try, and I hope you enjoy it. I'm gonna go have dinner, and then we'll come back with dessert. Okay, so now we're moving on to the dessert portion of our date night dinner, and we are going to be making molten fudge cakes, molten lava cakes. Not the super fancy ones that they flip out, but we're gonna make them and put them in these little ramekins, and you can eat them, and they're super good and very easy to make. And this recipe makes 2, so it's perfect for a date night. So we're starting out with our dairy and our sugar right here. So you need 1/4 cup of some kind of dairy. I'm using oat milk, and then it's 3 tablespoons of brown sugar, and then you add the star of the show, chocolate. So these are actually really expensive chocolates that I got when I did a truffle making class. So these are actually the last of them. It was perfect for this. So these are 2 ounces of chocolate, and you'll also need some more chocolate, about an ounce. You can see the chocolate on the side, to put inside the molten lava cakes to really make them molten. So what we have to do is melt this down. And you just do it in the microwave in 15-minute increments until it melts down. So we're gonna go do that right now, and we'll be right back. Okay, so we have our melted chocolate. This took about just around 30 to 40 seconds in my microwave. You don't want it to get too hot because we are going to be adding eggs in here, and you don't want to make chocolate scrambled eggs. So the next little bit we're going to put in is some oil, 2 tablespoons. And I like to put this in before the eggs because then it coats my spoon. And then we're going to add in 2 tablespoons of egg too. And this is just 1 beaten egg. This is the only hard part of the recipe because it's not quite a whole egg. It's a little more than a yolk. So you do actually have to beat the egg. And you want some of the white in there too to help with leavening. Then you just mix this all together. Move this so I don't knock this over. And then we're going to add our flour. There's 6 tablespoons of flour in here. There is 1/4 teaspoon of baking powder, this one, and 1/8 teaspoon of baking soda, this one. These 2 are different things. They do different things within the recipes. So you want to make sure that you get the correct proportions in there. And then a pinch of salt, because salt makes chocolate taste more like chocolate. And I'm also going to add in here, you can add vanilla in here if you have vanilla. Mine has seemingly disappeared, but I'm going to add coffee instead, some instant coffee, just a little tiny bit, because coffee also makes chocolate taste more like chocolate. I know it sounds really weird. You'll notice there was other stuff in there. This one actually has some dairy in it. And then I'm going to add my flour, and I'm not going to stir this too much, but I want all my flour to disappear. If you have lumps, you have lumps. That's fine. You just don't want big chunks of flour in here. So now I have my 2 greased ramekins. I'm going to pour some of the batter in each. And these are actually a little bit bigger than 6 ounces. So you have to bake these a little less than the recipe calls for. I think they're 7 ounces. But here's the hard part. What chocolate do I use? You have to make a choice. Do you want to go with raspberries or do you want to go with a filled chocolate? I personally like raspberries, so I'm going to go with the raspberries. I've also put peanut butter cups in these, or just peanut butter, or even frozen berries, and they're really good that way too. So we are going to put these just down in the center, about 3 a piece. That wasn't a clean break, but oh well. And then we're going to cover it with the rest of our batter. Try to get it as even as possible. I know it's hard. You'll use all of the batter. So if you're, and I should tell you not to do this because there are raw eggs in here right now. If you're a spoon licker, there won't be much left for you. Okay, I'm just going to shake these out to kind of even them out. And so these are going to go into a 350-degree oven. If you're using 6-inch ramekins, it will take about 15 minutes. These take about 13 minutes. So let's go put them in. Okay, so they've cooked. They've actually been out of the oven for about 3 minutes. They're still pretty darn hot. But this is what they kind of look like. And you can serve them as is. You could sprinkle over some powdered sugar, or you could get super fancy. Get out your whipped cream and a couple of blinged out raspberries to, you know, bring the raspberry in a little bit more. Look at that fancy little, I had some mint, a little sprig of mint in there, and there you go. You have your fancy chocolate dessert, and it couldn't be easier. And if you're wondering about these are just raspberries, and I happen to have some decorator's sugar left over. But there you go. Give it a try. Let me know if you like it, and check out, I believe it's called America's Test Kitchen Cookbook Cooking for Two, which is where this recipe comes from. There are a ton of really good two-person recipes, including a lot of desserts in there. And I hope you have a good Valentine's. And even if it's just you eating this, it's really good.
Okay, so for this recipe, we are going to need the following ingredients. Over on this side of the camera is 2 chicken breasts that I already cut up into 1-inch pieces, but I didn't want to show the raw chicken breast on camera if I could help it. Then we have some Parmesan cheese, a can of diced tomatoes, some Italian fettuccine. This is the bronze cut kind, which is the fettuccine that has a bit of texture to it, and that helps make our sauce nice, and this pasta is really, really delicious. Then we have salt and pepper, some basil, about 4 or 5 chopped up garlic cloves, and some heavy cream. So that is our lineup of ingredients, and then we'll get on to cooking. Okay, so while our pasta bubble double toil and troubles away, I am going to start over here on our creamy chicken margarita sauce. So I'm putting us on maybe like a medium high, and then I will add about a tablespoon of olive oil right into the pan. And then we will let that heat up, and then we'll add our 2 chicken breasts cut into 1-inch to like 1/2 inch pieces. But I'll just swirl this around, make sure the bottom of my pot is nice and coated. I like using this kind of almost wok style pot because it has the sides to catch everything. I do have, hold on one second. It's drying right now, but I have this pot as well, which is like a Teflon anti-stick pot, which it kind of looks like we came in here with some metal utensils. But it has just the straight-sided walls, and this is a great pan for making this dish as well because it holds everything inside, because we'll want to add the pasta to the dish, and I really like doing that. One, because it makes it really easy to stow away your leftovers, and 2, it kind of helps put the sauce with the pasta at the same time. So, because this one was clean, we're coming back to our rounded side of the pan, and it looks like my oil is kind of thinned out a bit. I'm swirling it around again, and then I will add our chicken. Being careful not to get my hands dirty. Alright, so 2 chicken breasts into the pot. I'm sorry if I yell, but it's kind of loud. Okay, and then I will let everybody kind of get coated in the oil so that they don't stick. And then I will leave it in one layer so that we can get some of the Maillard reaction going, so that some of this chicken browns and gives us some good brown flavor. At this stage, I'm going to salt and pepper the chicken as well. And remember here, you don't want to add too much salt, because you can adjust at the end. But also remembering that it's not going to be just this chicken. We're going to add a can of tomatoes to make the sauce. So you'll definitely want to make sure it is seasoned. chicken is cooking, I wanted to talk about the inspiration that I had behind this dish. It has become one of our household staples, or a different variation of it has become one of our household staples. It started out as just a tomato basil garlic sauce that my mom used to make to put over like frozen raviolis from the supermarket. And that just starts out with a can of diced tomatoes, which I have this one kind of open already, with a few minced cloves of garlic and a few pinches of basil. And if you mix that together and saute it in a pan for a couple of minutes, add some salt and pepper, it makes a great sauce for on top of any pasta. And then to kind of amp it up a bit, I added chicken, and you'll see that I'll add a little touch of heavy cream and some Parmesan cheese later as well. That makes this kind of like a tomatoey, creamy dish. And it's great for a date night because it's easy to make. It is essentially, it's a one-pot meal. I mean, we have the second pot with our spaghetti or our fettuccine going inside right now. But honestly, that's not that hard to clean up, and this is really great. It's really fast too, even though it's pretty much like a very nice meal. But it's awesome. You can also, if you want to skip the dairy, you don't have to put the Parmesan cheese and the heavy cream in if you don't want to, and it's just as good of a dish as well. Also, if you want maybe sliced chicken instead of sauteed chicken like this, you could grill up your chicken instead of doing this step, and it would make it quicker for you as well. I guess depending on how fast you can turn on your grill and make some chicken. But this is just as tasty as well. So I adjusted the camera so you can see a little bit better. I guess it's a good time now since the chicken isn't really raw anymore. I do still see a couple of pink bits, but we are also getting a bit of some brown bits as well, which is awesome. That adds a lot of flavor to the bottom of the pot, and it'll make our chicken really, really yummy. All right, so our pasta just finished boiling, and our chicken is making a lot of noise. It's got a whole bunch of really good brown bits. And how I check to see if my chicken is done is I'll find the fattest piece that I see, and I'll just pop it in half, and I'll check the inside. And if it's done, I might do with a couple of pieces. And if it's done, we will just go ahead and go on to our next step. So, I'm going to lower the temperature of the pan because we're going to add our garlic next. And to saute our garlic, I'm just going to come over to a side that's not as hot, and I'll add just a teeny tiny bit of olive oil, and then I'll saute the garlic, and then I'll mix it all in with the chicken as well. Big thumbs up from Austin. He's excited for his Italian Valentine's Day dinner. Alrighty, so I got a little bit of oil, and now we're going to add our garlic in my cute little tiny heart container. And then we'll saute that up with our big spoon. Alright, so I've mixed everything all in together. So we have our chicken with salt and pepper, and then our garlic cloves that were sauteed in that olive oil. And then now, to take even more heat off the pan, we're going to add our whole can of diced tomatoes. And mix that all together to form a nice big party. Until it looks like that. Some people I know like to add maybe like a pinch of sugar to tame the canned taste that comes from canned tomatoes, but I like to just simmer them for a little bit, and especially once you add the basil, it starts tasting really, really good. Also, the cream in this dish really helps to cut through that canned kind of tinny taste that comes from canned tomatoes. But another thing that you can do as well is you can add a little bit of tomato paste if you want some extra tomatoey flavor. And that would be yummy too. So I did bring down the temperature to like a medium low, and now because I want this to simmer so that some of the tomato liquid kind of condenses a bit, I'm gonna turn it back up to kind of like a medium or a 6 out of 10 here on my little electric stove so that all of that comes together. And then as that starts to bubble up, I'm going to add some of our basil. So I do not have fresh basil today, so I am going to just season it up a bit. I'm going to say you're going to want to add maybe like a teaspoon and a half. All right, and then we'll just let that bubble together before we add our dairy ingredients. The reason why I call this margarita chicken is that I used to work at a like small town pizza place, and there was this guy that used to come in all the time and order a margarita pizza, which is a pizza with tomatoes, basil, and garlic on top. I always thought it would be really yummy, but I never tried it. But I like to but I kind of took that inspiration and I made it into this recipe, also from the inspiration from my mom as well. And that's my husband putting a knife away like a good boy.
Staying out of the frame like a good boy.
Staying out of the frame.
Happy Valentine's Day, sweetie.
Happy Valentine's Day on February 1st, baby. I love you.
I kissed her on the cheek.
Oh my
We're
goodness.
keeping it PG
So
for the
PG.
little ones.
Okay, so everybody's gotten happy, gotten to know each other, so I'm going to take us back down to a like medium-low heat and let that cool off a little bit before we add our dairy ingredients. So now we're just getting a little simmer on, baby simmer. And now we're going to add our heavy cream. So I like to take this really slow because you can add too much heavy cream too fast and you cannot take it out, and it becomes way more like a white sauce. But so I shop at Smith's, and this is the only heavy cream that I found was heavy whipping cream. But that'll work okay too. I'm not sure what's available at Albertsons in BC. But so we're just going to start with a little bit. I would say that's probably 3 tablespoons. And I will mix it in, see how we go. Ooh. That looks almost perfect. Okay, so 3 or 4 tablespoons of cream gives you a nice, very pink sauce. And I'm gonna come in, and I like to do maybe 3 handfuls of Parmesan. And that makes it nice and cheesy, and it kind of takes any of those cravings that you may have for like a Olive Garden date night. It really satisfies those. So we'll just stir that all together. And now that Parmesan cheese is still kind of melting in, but I'm gonna go ahead and give it a taste test in case we need to add a bit more salt and pepper. I'm gonna add just a pinch more of salt. And then I'm going to add one of my household's favorite ingredients, a little bit of red pepper flake. Since we added the cream, this will kind of help balance out the richness that's going on here. And also to balance out the richness, we're going to eat this alongside a nice salad with a homemade balsamic dressing. And I'll leave Austin's recipe for balsamic dressing down in the description below, where all of both mine and Sam's recipes are going to be. Okay, so there we have it. Nice tomatoey, cheesy goodness. And I'm going to go ahead and add some pasta to this mix. Okay, so we went ahead and mixed our fettuccine into our mixture, and that's what she looks like, everybody. Like I said, we're gonna have this alongside a salad with a balsamic vinaigrette, which is Austin's favorite dressing, and I will leave that recipe linked down below, like I said. And I hope that you guys try this recipe out, and if you do, give me a comment down below, but also let me know what you guys make, if you make dinner on Valentine's Day, if there's anything special that you have traditionally in your family. Okay, everybody, happy Valentine's Day. Bye-bye.